What was the weirdest physical feeling you've ever felt? A spinal block. They give you a local anesthetic so you don't feel any pain when they insert the needle into your spine, but the sensation of it poking around in there is incredibly strange and unpleasant. When it gets really cold out, I mean really cold, I can feel the metal of my hip replacements. It's a really odd feeling. I have a spinal fusion and I can feel it in my back. Really caught me off guard the first time I felt it. In my case, the cold metal gives me horrid back spasms, so I'm a warm climate kind of gal. I was having a Nerf gun war with a friend as a kid. While in the middle of a shootout I made a mad dash for the back of the house, but not before my friend's dog, Chow Chow, ran in front of me and my big toe. I was barefoot, went straight into the dog's anus as I was running. It happened so fast, and I continued playing Nerf war with my friend as if nothing happened. But that feeling of my toe going into a dog's anus for a brief second stuck with me for the rest of my life. This is the second time I've told anyone this story. I've had several, but the most surreal would be when I was in a tiny little guard shack at an auto auction when it got struck by lightning. My brother-in-law used to be a nighttime security guard and my buddies and I would all go and hang out with him at night. This is seriously a tiny little shack, by the way, probably about the size of your bathroom. One night it was storming pretty hard and 5 of us were crammed in there talking about games or whatever. I was standing up about 3 feet from the door when I just happened to look outside. Suddenly, it was like a white speck of light just outside the door exploded and filled my entire vision. Then the loudest noise I've ever heard completely deafened me, then nothing. In a split second I went from standing to hunched over covering my everything as best I could. I remember the moments afterward too. My body was frozen and my mind went blank. And then it was like my brain computer booted up and did a system check. Am I still alive? Well, I'm thinking. Check. Am I in pain? Nope. Check. Can I moves arms and stands a bit? Check. Lungs good breathes? Check. Can I hear anything? Check I guess. Are my friends okay? What the frick was that check? When I was 20, I had a serious staph infection in my leg following surgery to repair a tib-fib fracture. The surgeon carved out the infected tissue on the front of my leg in the middle of my shin. The area was 5-6 inches long, 1.5 inches wide and completely down to the exposed bone. I had to clean and dress it twice a day while it slowly healed and new tissue grew in to fill the hole. On one occasion, I used the sterile tweezers to tap on my exposed tibia. I initially didn't feel anything. I tapped a few more times a little harder and felt a weird sensation in my leg below the knee. I tapped a few more times a little harder and the sensation was more intense, and throughout my entire body. It's difficult to describe, but it was like a RP shiver x10. It seemed to start in my spine and spread out from there in several rapid waves. I writhed in my seat several times involuntarily. When it was over, I had a ringing in my ears, and I was seeing stars. In a couple of minutes everything had returned to normal. I was pretty sure it caused no permanent harm, but I wanted no part of doing it again. When I saw my surgeon the following week for a scheduled checkup, I asked him about it. He looked at me, shook his head, and said he didn't think I harmed anything, and told me not to do it again. I inquired what the sensation was, and he replied, "It's your brain telling you to stop tapping on your freaking tibia." I inquired what the sensation was, and he replied, "It's your brain telling you to stop tapping on your freaking tibia. Your doctor is a smart man. I know the feeling you are talking about. I had a hairline fracture in my middle finger and when I'd accidentally hit it on something, that's the feeling I'd get." My girlfriend used to have very long hair and it would fall out sometimes. Well, there would be hair on my bed, in my own hair, and pretty much anywhere. Well, one day I was done doing my business and starting wiping. Felt a small tickle and pulled. One of her freaking hairs came out of my butthole. As a female who has had long hair, this has happened to me over 20 times in my life. I went blind for a minute or two once. It was one of the scariest moments of my life and I was terrified I'd never be able to see again. The weird feeling was the feeling of helplessness as I tried to make myself see but couldn't, and I couldn't even describe what I was seeing because it wasn't black. It was just nothing, like I'd somehow forgotten how to comprehend colors. I would not like to experience that again. Had brain surgery. They went in through my nose and cut the tumor up, then pulled out the chunks they could get. The pain the next day is a lot like an ice cream headache and a clamp on your forehead. Whenever I would stand, I'd feel like the clamp would tighten and my world would get smaller. Geez dude, I'm glad you're okay. That sounds horrible. Every so often my ears itch deep within. I can't ever stop it, and sometimes it feels like I could scratch the itch with my tongue from inside the side of my mouth. But nope, there's nothing I can do about it when it happens. Migraines. Not being sure if you're going blind in one eye, to thinking you'll lose your right arm, to being unable to speak in real sentences, to getting the worst headache of your life. Migraines are so weird sometimes. Usually half my face goes numb, so doctors thought I was having a stroke. Sometimes my peripheral vision just disappears, and once I couldn't read, I could see. I understood that I was looking at letters that should make words, but I had no idea what those words were, let alone meant. Waking up in the middle of wisdom teeth removal to see the dentist chipping away at your jaw with steel instruments, all while high as frick. Had a leaded glass window break and fall on my arm. Points of leaded glass went into the skin in 4 different areas from bicep to wrist. Well, to get the little shards of leaded glass out, they use a long wooden Q-tip, lift up the skin, poke the Q-tip through the cuts, and rub it as far as they can in every direction to pick up little glass parts under your skin. Nope. I have many fears. This is the worst. Donqueef. Had weight loss surgery where they pumped me full of gas to get around my organs better. Next week and a half I was gassy as heck, to a painful degree. But what really got me was when I went to pee and it just started sputtering. I wasn't sure whether to cry or laugh, so I did both. When my weight was low and I hadn't had any food, I was lying in bed. My heart rate dropped to about 37 BPM. I couldn't bring myself to move, so I counted and began beating really heavily. I started shaking ever so slightly. My limbs began to feel spongy and I went lightheaded. It was this almost high, euphoric feeling. I got a sweet milky taste in my mouth and started salivating a lot. Thought I was dying. It kinda sounds like you were. There is a specific orgasm I had with my ex-girlfriend that I remember vividly that was definitely different than most I've had. She did something right, very right, and I came so hard that I blacked out. Not even kidding. My eyesight went out for a good few seconds, and veins were popping on my forehead. It took ages to calm down from it too, and she actually asked if I was alright. My heart rate didn't stabilize for a good minute or two either. It was the craziest physical feeling I've had so far. I had a really good orgasm on Valentine's Day from my girlfriend, but instead of blacking out I pulled out of her and let out 4 loud consecutive farts I couldn't even control. THST crap, it was magical, and I am sure she thought it was romantic. Waking up after anesthesia. I couldn't remember anything. I sat up and my face was super fricked up. I tried to ask the woman in the room with me as my car totaled, did I kill anyone, and started trying to scream. It just came out as a soft whisper. She let me attempt to scream it again in her ear. She laughed softly and informed me that my wisdom tooth removal went fine. I laid back down, giggled manically for 10 minutes. My mother, who I hadn't noticed, finally asked me if I was okay. I stared back into her eyes as intently as I could muster and said I'm doing backflips and cracked a crap grin a mile wide. Orgasmed on LSD and then kept feeling orgasms in random body parts. It all culminated in teeth orgasms where I clenched really hard and broke a bit off my tooth. One of the weirdest feelings I've experienced was actually on LSD. It was like I could hear and feel all of my insides working. I'd swallow and I could feel it go through every part of my stomach and intestines. Very unsettling but also pretty cool. It was like I was empty inside but not. IV. It's the weirdest thing. When they put it in, it felt like all my blood went cold and I could feel the liquid shooting up my arm and going into different parts of my body. I could also taste it. That was not a fun night, but it feels refreshing. Having my heart reset from an adenosine injection. Had a worryingly long bout of SVT when I was in college, brought on by a lot of stress, lack of sleep, and too much caffeine. Keep it to less than 3 cups of coffee a day. Guys, my heart was in tachycardia at around 170 BPM whilst I was sitting still, and it would not slow down for 12 hours. So once I got into the emergency room, they gave me a shot of adenosine. My heart stopped for about 2 seconds, wherein I felt like I was falling through the bed into a deep abyss of doom and utter hopelessness. I was dying. Life was over. My body had ceased to function. There was nothing I could do. I was paralyzed by fear and rushing headlong towards the end. Except then I coughed a little bit and I was okay. I was in the shower recently and got the top of my head directly under the hot water and just let it pour down into my scalp, and I straight up had a knee-buckling no ejaculation orgasm. It was incredible. If you're a dude and your shower head is on a hose, set it to spray and use a stream or two to tickle your balls. More time between wanks, the better the tickle feeling. Just be careful, you might fall and hurt yourself. People who want to frick with someone in this vein. Stick your cheek against someone's forehead and then push your tongue against the inside of that cheek and just rub it all around. Guaranteed to be one of the weirdest feelings they've felt physically. Don't have another forehead to use, so I just used the back of my hand. Hypothermia. Back in high school, I was backpacking on a scout trip. 12 of us ended up caught under a crappy tarp during a 2-hour rain and hailstorm on the exposed side of a mountain. Me and about half the other hikers ended up on the outer edge of the tarp. Someone had to be, and by the time the storm subsided, we were drenched and shivering, several miles from any place we could safely warm up. Spoiler alert. In the end we made it off the mountain, in time to build a fire before nightfall. It all turned out fine. Being that cold sucks unbelievably hard for a while, and then all the feeling just slips away and it's a lot like being pleasantly drunk. You feel great. My memory of the incident is a little spotty, but the better insulated hikers told me later they had to stop me several times from giving away my coat. You wouldn't think the process of freezing to death would make you feel so warm. Sounds like you experienced paradoxical undressing. It's a weird phenomenon. Ooh, I've got one. It was weird, awful, and I've not felt it before or since. Years ago I had a miscarriage and I started hemorrhaging. I was pretty far gone, bleeding out, and the medics were frantically slapping my veins to get one to rise high enough so they could give me a blood transfusion. The feeling I had is hard to describe. It was like intense dread in physical form. Every cell was screaming. Once they got the transfusion going, I felt immediate relief. The dread was indeed weird. Impending doom, not a good sign usually. Interesting anecdote with the every cell was screaming. I occasionally have this happen. One ear will suddenly and completely cut out and then fade in with a high-pitched ringing that rises in tone until I can't hear it anymore, and then I can hear again normally. Totally bizarre. Never understood why it happens or when. Seems random. This happens to me at least once a day. If you ever figure it out, let me know. I had surgery to remove excess skin after I lost 150 plus pounds. Slowly, over the course of a couple years and with no help. They put drainage tubes under my skin to keep fluid from building up after surgery. When they took them out, the only way I can describe the feeling was that of slurping a spaghetti noodle, but backwards. Had a terrible mouth infection once and the feeling of my taste buds swelling up so much they ripped each other out of their sockets and sometimes exploded. That was weird and sucked. I sometimes get this feeling that I'm watching my own life on a movie screen. I think it's called depersonalization, but I can't remember for sure. It can be really terrifying. Proper stretching kicks. Kicked, touched toe to forehead. Felt like my hip popped out as I kicked. It was just the tendon doing something new, but it was very satisfying. I once fell and broke my tooth on a table. My lip was covering it when I fell, so the tooth went straight through my upper lip. Unbeknownst to me, it had splintered and a large piece of it stayed in my lip. Apparently the doc missed it. 2 weeks later it was healed up but didn't feel right. Pinched on a bump in my lip and popped out the tooth like a pimple. Crap was messed up. Exploding head syndrome. Late at night in the dark, I heard screeching dial-up modem sounds in the center of my head. It didn't hurt, but it felt like aliens were hacking my brain. I used to get kidney stones as a teenager, so I had kidney surgery to fix it. I had a stent put in to assist urine flow, a 30 centimeter thin tube with curled ends, one end in kidney, the other in your bladder. A piece of wire is attached to the stent, comes out the end of your willy and taped. That crap felt horrible. Then, I had it removed. The doc kinda distracted me. I was expecting an anesthetic. I had accidentally yanked on it earlier. Gave you the funny knee feeling but more in I'm pulling your dong inside out. Pretty much the most strong sensations ever as he pulled the stent out like a magic trick from my dong. Don't recommend it. After I had surgery to science the crap out of a kidney stone that was stuck in my ureter, they left some stents in there to make sure it didn't form scars that would block the ureter. Standard procedure. And you'll sleep for that entire process, and then you wake up after. They didn't warn me of jack crap when I woke up about the first pee after. All that was said was go to the bathroom right now so that we can make sure there are no clots that will obstruct your urinary flow. Yankee goddamn freaking doodle dandy. That sucker was gone. So freaking happy, right? That lasted until I had to spring that first freaking leak. If you ever have the laser surgery for a kidney stone, make sure you sit the frick down for your first pee. It hurts so freaking bad that your knees go weak. And then the shock of pee straight blood on top of that. And then your urethra is swollen up too from a freaking laser being stuck up your dick hole. So it's like a garden hose with a finger over it at full freaking blast. There I was in the bathroom trying to wash my blood off the walls and floor because nobody freaking warned me to sit the frick down when I took that very first pee. It looked like somebody sneezed while on their period in there. Then you have to go back a few weeks later to get the stents out. You are not asleep when they take the stents out. So they jam this metal cable with a hollowish center into your dong and up into your bladder. And then something comes out of that hollowish area that hooks the stent and pulls it out of you. They numb the tip of your dong. Like that somehow made a freaking difference. And they shoot your bladder full of water during this entire ordeal. So then they are pulling this thing out of you. And you feel like you are pee yourself at the same time. The entire time, the adrenaline is rushing and my body has decided fight or flight. Let's choose flight. So I am trying to get the frick out of the chair with the nurse trying to keep me laying back on the bench. Because you are not thinking rationally anymore. There is no way you are attaining rational thought during this process, while the doctor has this metal sucker jammed up my dong. And then right after, all I could think was I have got to pee right freaking now. Your dick hole is swollen for a few hours after that. But you at least freaking know that this time because of the prior experience. And you won't pee blood either. All of that balls is totally preferable to the kidney stone getting stuck. 10/10 would do again if I had another obstructive stone. I was standing on my porch enjoying a cigarette and this wonderful feeling of peace and calm fell over me. It was joy and clarity and instantly I was done smoking. I hadn't even been considering stopping, my just did. Tossed the pack and never looked back for 2 years. Then climbed back on the dang horse because no one likes a quitter. I am awesome at quitting. I've quit about 5 times, each time for a year or 2. I'm smoking a cig right now. When I decided to kill myself, I constantly felt empty on my left side. I had always thought about my past and future selves almost like company, so when I realized I didn't have any more future selves, I felt empty on that side of my body. This seems neurologically interesting. Having 3 8-inch stainless steel pins removed from my foot after the bones had healed, a little soft snap when they turned them with a pair of pliers to fully detach it from the bone and tissue, and then the really odd sensation of them being pulled out. I experience exploding head syndrome. Sometimes, as I am falling asleep, I feel like a bolt of energy zaps through brain and then explodes, jolting me awake. I've experienced this since I was a young teenager. I would ask other people sometimes if they experienced this and they all treated me like I was crazy. Finally, through an internet search, I found out it actually had a name. When I was a little kid, I would get these very specific headaches with a specific visualization of the pain. I would see a bundle of fibers hanging from the ceiling of a cavern with them being pulled more and more taut, fraying along the way, until there were just a few threads connected, and as they pulled tighter, the pain would increase. After a few years, they ceased, but I never knew why or when they happened. Until, about 20 years later, I ate a cookie that had a lot of nutmeg in it and bam, the very same headache I hadn't experienced for almost 2 decades. With a little research, I found that nutmeg is actually very toxic. Eating a whole nutmeg would be toxic enough to kill you, And I realized that when I was younger, my mother would make egg custard, yum, with nutmeg sprinkled on top. I would eat 2 or 3 in a sitting. They were that good, but it was the nutmeg giving me these headaches. Never again. Had a cystoscopy, a flexible telescope inserted through the urethra all the way into the bladder. It dispenses lidocaine ahead of it as it goes. The scope look maybe a hair more than no. 2 pencil width. The lidocaine was effective, but the bladder penetration feels like a sucker punch in the gut delivered by your own dong. Turns out it was a waste of time. I just had a side effect from a decongestant that was preventing fully emptying the bladder. A sigh. The sensation of having stitches in your eye sockets move because they are attached to your eyeballs. Corrective lazy eye surgery. Also when the doctor trimmed them using nail clippers. Don't blink, he said. It'll be fine, he said. Lost half my eyelashes, I did. Definitely the first time I squirted, or pee or whatever the heck happened. Lost total control of my body, starting squirming and convulsed somewhat. Immediately following, I involuntarily started bawling my eyes out. Not sobbing, full on crying. Never in my life have I felt something that made me not only mentally freak out but also physically. My boyfriend was proud. I had brain surgery and some of my nerves got damaged, so my left arm is anyways kind of tingly. The best way I can describe it is that it's always half asleep. Every now and then I feel slightly removed from my physical body. Everything seems far away, and everything is very quiet, and any physical contact feels like it's happening through a membrane of sorts. It's weird as crap. I once put the end of a phone charger that was plugged into the mains into the end of my tongue. It felt like the whole of the inside of my body doing a Mexican wave. I once mistook my uvula, punching bag in throat, for a large chunk of mucus and spent the entire day trying to hack it up. See, the question asks for your weirdest physical feeling, not your most embarrassing realization. The only one that has happened more than once is that feeling you get in your junk when you are on a roller coaster and you go down. Mushrooms. There was an intense body high, and my body felt like it weighed about 10 pounds. It also felt like I had to control both bones of my leg independently from each other. It was also the first time in my life when I didn't hate myself. It was maybe the most wonderful thing I've ever experienced. If you are new to the channel, you can subscribe. I publish new videos every day. Until then, check another video. Bye for now.